morning, everybody. This is Ian Williams with the Foreign Press Association, and I'm joined by Kristen Salumi, one of our executive board members who's won prizes for her work on Haiti, from Remenson Tenor, and also from Chris Greene. From the two of them are from Medicine and Food for Kids, which is working in Haiti, which is those are memorable words, because working in Haiti is not something that happens very often in terms of a complex operation. And they make food and medicine and for kids, as the name would suggest. And of course, this is I mean, you could say it's a particular time, but ever since I got to the United Nations 30, 40 years ago, Haiti has been on the agenda. It's been perennially on the agenda, but it's never in the outbox. It's never finished. It's never dealt with. And there's a close relation. Haiti is one of the first independent, it is the second independent country in the Western Hemisphere after the United States. It's the only country that liberated itself from the slaves. But on the other hand, as talk goes about reparations, we should remember that the French government actually insisted that Haiti had to pay compensation for all of the slaves that were liberated. They had to buy their own freedom from the French government, which bankrupted the infant Haitian state, which was otherwise showing a lot of promise. So the world, the international community owes Haiti a lot. It's also occurred to me that when we saw the biopic, Ridley Scott's epic on Napoleon, it wasn't mentioned that his wife, Josephine, had actually apparently had a Lysistrata strike and refused to do anything with him until he reintroduced slavery into the Caribbean French colonies. So the French fought a long and bitter war trying to reintroduce slavery onto a republic that liberated itself. So there is a lot of history in Haiti, more than can be consumed locally, probably. And we now are at the particular juncture where governments have this sort of half-life of a mayfly, where nobody knows who can be trusted and who can deliver the goods. And yet the people remain always charming and brilliant and vivacious. So in the midst of all of this, we have Medicine and Food for Kids, which is successfully feeding them, or successfully making efforts to feed them, because there are too many people and it's a work that's never going to get finished. And we also now hand over to Kristen Salumi, who won prizes for her coverage of UN operations in Haiti. The UN's other great contribution was cholera. UN peacekeepers inadvertently introduced cholera, which is, it could be passed off as an accident and you say, whoops, sorry, but then spent years and years denying it, simply on the bureaucratic assumption that it's safer to say no. So cholera is now endemic in Haiti, thanks to UN peacekeepers. This is not, how should we say, a formula for trust and for foreigners in Haiti. It adds to the suspicion for all the international history, which I've mentioned before. So, Kristen,
Thanks, Ian. And thank you, Chris and Remenson, for talking to us today about the situation in Haiti. I'm sure, as everyone joining us knows, gangs have taken control of Port-au-Prince. The Prime Minister, Ariel Henry, has been stopped from coming back to the country. And just yesterday, the UN Human Rights High Commissioner, Volker Turk, put out a statement about the situation in Haiti. He called it cataclysmic. 900 schools have closed, but for kids in particular, since that's our focus today. Kids are being recruited by gangs, and 19% increase in children suffering from acute malnutrition, which was already a concern in Haiti. So very dire situation. I'm wondering, Chris, if you can start off by telling us about your operation in Cap-Hatienne and what you do there. Tell us about Meds for Food and Kids and how it came to be and what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Ian, first off, for having us. We really appreciate it. So Meds and Food for Kids was founded in 2003 by Dr. Patricia Wolf. And she had been coming to Haiti for quite a few years before that, on medical missions, and just really saw the need and the just extreme malnutrition that was present, and her heart is moved. I mean, she's one of the most passionate and energetic people I've ever met. And so when she saw this, she just said, somebody's got to do something, right? And at a few years into her time there, one of her colleagues in St. Louis, Dr. Mark Maneri, was kind of working on a formulation of a product which ended up becoming Plumpy Nut, or RUTF. And so she would come to Haiti throughout the year, and she would just make whatever amount of it she could, and she would get it out to clinics. And as time went by, we grew as an organization. She rented out a house in Cap-Hatienne and began to produce the product in larger scale there. Against all odds, was able to eventually get that facility actually approved by UNICEF to begin to make product and supply UNICEF in Haiti. And then in 2010, we built our factory in Cap-Hatienne, which was a monumentous accomplishment for us. It's what you can see in the background on both my and Remenson's screen. And so what we really do is we make this ready-to-use therapeutic food. So it's a miracle product. It has a 2-year shelf life. It has an over 90% recovery rate from the children that are on this product. It doesn't have to be refrigerated, so it makes it the perfect solution for environments like Haiti and throughout the world where long supply chains, storage is questionable. And so we make this product in Cap-Hatienne. We distribute it throughout Haiti. We've also partnered with UNICEF to distribute the product to 17 other countries outside of Haiti. And along the way, as we begin to kind of treat this acute problem of severe malnutrition, we also begin to ask the question of, well, what is the long-term solution? How do we, we're treating and we're saving lives today, but what about the future? And so we begin to look at ways of expanding our operation into what I like to say is kind of a more holistic approach to this. So we then began to work with universities in the States and create agricultural initiatives in the northern part of Haiti. So we work with farmers all throughout Haiti to provide inputs, best practices on how they can improve specifically with peanuts, how to improve the yields of these peanuts, get a better, a more food safe peanut in the general marketplace. Which then allows us, of course, to procure more of the peanuts necessary for our product. And from local suppliers, we produced it there in Cap-Hatienne. So the other part of this was, hey, what's really important in the long run is that jobs are being created, right? That families have the opportunity to build skills and have work, to have the employment they need. We then take that product and, of course, we distribute it, as I said, throughout Haiti, and work very closely with the Ministry of Public Health and many other nonprofits doing great work in Haiti on education around nutrition, around how to not just utilize this product, but what are the nutritional factors they can look at, how to utilize local foods to help prevent malnutrition. So it's a very comprehensive approach that we've taken, both trying to address the acute need, but also looking at what are the solutions that are required for long-term change.
And Remenson, you are in the country right now, I guess, as we're speaking, 90 employees you have at the factory there. Can you talk about what you need to operate? Chris was talking about peanuts. What other supplies do you need? How many supplies come from Haiti directly and how many come from abroad? And how is the current situation impacting your ability to get supplies, if at all?
Thank you, Kristen, and Ian, thank you for having us. Yes, I am actually in Cap-Hatienne, so where our factory is, and we have, 90 employees working for us. As Chris was mentioning earlier, when we started our journey, what we realized was that the peanut that we were using in the IUTF from Haiti was highly contaminated with aflatoxin. So that's when we decided that we also have to take initiative to not only, continue buying peanut, but to create those programs where we could train the farmers to improve and increase the yield of the local peanut and also the quality of the peanut. So peanut is our base ingredient that we use, but we do have a lot of other ingredients like milk powder, soy flour, the oil that we use, and also the premix, which is basically the main ingredient into the IUTF. So because of the quality of the peanut in Haiti that is very low, so we do have to import peanut from other regions like in Argentina or from the US. And we are basically, our goal is really, as we grow and as we continue with those training, that we can buy more peanut locally and work with other partners that may also grow other of the ingredients that we have in Haiti, because right now there's no production of soybeans in Haiti, so we have to import that. The sugar, unfortunately, the Haiti is no longer producing sugar, so we cannot buy sugar locally. So no, we're no longer producing sugar, so we have to import our sugar from Central America. So yes, because of that, it's very challenging. Imagine that, Ian, if you came to Haiti over 20 years ago. So us being not in Port-au-Prince can be a very good advantage, but being in Haiti itself is very challenging because we are on a remote location where we rely a lot on ingredients, raw materials, even the parts to come from abroad. So we had to basically work really hard to have good planning and making sure that we always have raw materials coming in, parts coming in, so we can continue our operation. So I would say one of the, yes.
I was just going to say a quick question. Does most of the food come over land, through ports, through air? I guess it must come into the port initially.
Yes, that's the point I was going to touch. One of the advantage that we have where we are located is in Cap-Hatienne. We are fortunate enough to have an international airport as well as an international port. So our goods, our raw materials, they don't have to go to Port-au-Prince because that would be very, very hard for us to get those raw materials, especially in this critical time where most of the roads are cut off. So it would be impossible for us to continue our operation. So I think this is a blessing for us that we are located in Cap-Hatienne, that we are able to, get our raw materials. But the challenge remains the same because when there's conflict, when there's political instability, unfortunately, the ports and customs, they are not operational. So this also put a lot of delays on us receiving the goods so we can continue our operations.
Some commentators have suggested that as part of the price exacted when the US and the UN first intervened in Haiti, that traditional restrictions were removed, which destroyed local agriculture and production. For example, you mentioned sugar. So that the market had to be thrown open internationally, which meant that local Haitian producers were wiped out. Is that true?
Let's put it this way. I think, Haiti is still, we are not at an industrial level, even with agriculture. A lot of the agriculture is being done like artisanal. So there were no investment done into the agricultural field. And then you have to compete with product coming from the US or from Asia. Of course, it will have an impact on what you're having because you cannot compete. You don't have the resources to produce at the level that they are producing. So the price of rice or sugar coming from abroad, of course, it's cheaper, and people choose what is cheapest. And that's, I would say, yes, it has an impact on the local production. What we are seeing for the last maybe 5 years, we've seen there's a lot of initiative taken by Haitian entrepreneurs and people who understand the need for us to eat organic, for instance. I think we are probably by far probably the only country in the region where we still producing organic food. And this is an advantage. And I think a lot of people.
That's because you can't afford the fertilizers.
Yes. So
okay. Just so your halos don't dazzle us.
Yes, I think this is probably is motivating Haitian to buy locally, and we hope that there could be further investment that we can really actually invest in the agriculture field, because that's in critical times it's a big problem. Imagine that ports are closed and then goods cannot coming in and then you don't produce enough to feed the people, then it's a catastrophe. So I think there's a need for us to keep that balance. If we are doing import and export, that we can produce enough to feed the people that we can export, but we also can import.
I know from some other manufacturers I've spoken to, they had severe difficulties with corruption in the bureaucracy. It was almost impossible to get something through customs without paying hefty bribes to officials to allow it through, regardless of any regulations. Is that a problem for you in getting what you need in the way of sort of peanuts, soybeans, etc.?
I think you touched on the maybe root cause of why Haiti is where it is today, Ian. And I think you talk about, the debt of independence that we had to pay, and then all of those cholera outbreak. And I would say beyond those, corruption is probably one of the biggest problem that Haiti is facing. So there's a lot of corruption, unfortunately, and natural disaster is another aspect of where we are. For MFK itself, we have worked, as Chris mentioned, we've worked with the Ministry of Health, and we have other ministries in Haiti where we work with them, where basically they give us the authorization that we can import our goods duty-free, but throughout the time, it's really hard to get that franchise renewed because it has to be renewed every year. So what we ended up doing is that we're actually paying like with an advance payment to basically be able to get those containers out. So although we have that franchise, but until we receive the renewal, so we pay. And sometimes the government will give us back those checks, but in sometimes we're not able to get those. Now, the challenge is, I would say there's a lot of issue with bureaucratic. And at the present that we are speaking, one of the challenges that we're facing is, although we have all of this system in place, but there's been a lot of changes happening. And then you need to have sort of documentation and authorization. And when you have dysfunctional at every level and there's, you don't know who to go to, it makes it very difficult, I would say. So we are not in position where we have to pay bribe, just to put it out there, but the situation is dire and it's very difficult and it's quite challenging because of the environment that we are in today.
Yeah, I would add to that it is, as Remenson said, we've been very fortunate to not be in positions because of our relationships with the Ministry of Public Health. We've been able to import things and kind of sidestep a lot of the, let's say, corruption that is very prevalent. But the cost of doing that has been that sometimes a process that could happen in 1 to 2 weeks takes 7 weeks, right? And because it's inconsistent, one time it'll be 2 weeks and the next time it's 7 weeks, it makes things like supply chain and planning very challenging. The other thing I would add is every time, almost without fail, either when I'm flying into Cap-Hatienne or flying out, I'm sitting next to oftentimes a young Haitian entrepreneur, and sometimes they're coming in from Canada, they're coming in from the US, and they have, you know, they'll relay to me these ideas they have about starting business in Haiti, right? How to help their country begin to grow and thrive. And without fail, from, you know, 4 out of 5 people, it's they have an idea, they get to a place of execution, and then they hit customs and it's a roadblock, right? And so just to your point, I think this is one of the biggest challenges, is that it's just preventing Haiti from developing.
Well, that raises the point of sovereignty and independence. Any attempts to say, okay, we're dissolving Haitian customs, we're replacing them, we're going to hire a Swiss company to run the customs, say, then that will be met with howls of outrage of 200 years of sovereignty and independence and letting the foreigners in. How do you balance those?
If I may go back again, Ian, I think when I talk about corruption, I think one of the challenge is, unfortunately, in most cases, it would be fair to say that you don't have the right people at the right position or the right place. And sometimes it's very difficult. And what I do see is sometimes with custom and other Haitian, agencies, that there's a lot of contractors because the government are not allowed to employ everybody. So there's a lot of contractors. And then contractors, sometimes they can be more powerful than even employees because basically they demand for you to give them compensation.
The contractors, is this as a consequence the way things have always been, or is this a consequence of IMF rules on free competition that they don't trust government, therefore you must use outside contractors to do things?
No, those are local contractors, not outside contractors.
I know, but is it outsiders insisting that contractors have to be used, that you don't have a government body do this?
Yeah, I honestly would not know about this, but what it's fair to say is, I think in the past we've had that situation where the whole banking system or even the port system was run by the US. Like in the first occupation in Haiti, it was run by the US, and I would say that that system was created and people were trained, and unfortunately over time we've had that situation. So one of the questions I think everybody would ask is, when we have to do, because right now at the state that we are, we need help, we need all of the support that we can, but we have to do it differently than what we did in the past, because if that didn't work, so we need to learn from that to say, okay, this is how we're going to do it. So I think the challenge is when there's a complete takeover and then there's no reporting, there's no way that we can know exactly what is going on. I think that's where a lot of people have problems. But I would agree that nothing is working right now. We need a solution, but that solution, at any time, there should be transparency and it should be well defined on how we are going to do it. Otherwise, you would come and you bring a solution that might be a good solution, but not a good solution for the country, because culturally, there's a lot of things that you need to take into consideration. So I do think that there's a need for, a takeover, if we call it this way, but without proper way of defining it and to know what will be the key deliverables, the outcome, and even the short-term wins. How do we see, okay, this is working? Then yes, you will have a lot of opposition and people would say, this is colonialism or neocolonialism.
I do want to talk about those solutions, but I'm also curious, just getting back to the situation on the ground. We see the horrible images coming from Port-au-Prince. How much impact is that having on the rest of the country and where you are? When we hear about children malnutrition on the rise, is that just in the capital because they can't go to the store physically because it's not safe, because schools have closed? what is the knock-on effect for the rest of the country?
This is an excellent question, Kristen. A lot of time that when people talk about the situation in Haiti, and unfortunately, people always assume this is only happening in Port-au-Prince. Let me start by saying that Port-au-Prince is the capital, it's the center, it's all where all of decisions are making, you know. And because of that, also, that's where a lot of things are still centralized. So a lot of other departments in Haiti, major cities, they still rely on, you know, fuel coming from Port-au-Prince, food, you know, essential products and medicine coming from Port-au-Prince. So when you have all of that, all of the conflict, and then you have this outbreak of the gang, what is going to happen? All of the roads basically are cut off. All of the major cities are cut off from Port-au-Prince. And especially in the South, where basically they don't have, you know, as much as flexibility that we would have in the North. So you will have a lot of people that will basically be on the position where their food cannot go to them. And also the South, especially like we have a major city, Jeremy, where they produce a lot of vegetables and a lot of goods, basically they produce and they send them to Port-au-Prince. So what is happening, those people cannot also sell what they produce. So they cannot sell that to the locals because everybody is producing the same thing. What they ended up having is that they cannot ship them to Port-au-Prince. Those goods go to waste, and then people don't have money. So this is a big problem because it's not only affecting Port-au-Prince. There's a lot of cities and remote places, communities that rely on goods that are coming from Port-au-Prince, they cannot receive them. And on top of that also, because, you know, we share the island with the Dominican Republic. So if you go to the southeast of Haiti, a lot of those small communities, even cities, they don't rely on anything from Haiti. They would rather rely on things coming from the DR. And right now the border is closed. So imagine that you cannot send food to them. They cannot buy from the DR. So what is going to happen? And I think this is what contributing into the 19% increase. And this is only where people can actually go to do, you know, an estimation of those cases. And of course, anything like fuel, for instance, is a big problem in Haiti. And I would tell you today, when we look at, like, even in Cap-Hatienne, there's less transportation, there's less vehicle on the street because they cannot come to Cap-Hatienne. And if those, you know, gas station owners were to place an order, they pay extreme amount of money to get that fuel coming in. So they have to increase the price of the diesel, of the gasoline, and people don't have the money. So it's not only in Port-au-Prince. Now, I would say that in Port-au-Prince, what is happening is critical, is catastrophic, because you have mass displacement of people. A lot of people cannot, you know, they don't have a place to stay. And what we are seeing, we see schools and churches, they are converting them into shelters for people who have been displaced by the violence. And of course, those people, they need immediate support, like what we are doing. The IUTF is already there for them. But in some cases, we cannot even dare to think to send someone to make those deliveries. So we have to work with those truckers and to facilitate the distribution. But at a time, it's very hard even for them because they have to find the best time, the best way for them to do those distribution.
Do you get the sense that the gangs, the one thing they seemed to unite over was keeping Henri out? Is there any hope that I mean, that they would want to improve the situation on the ground? Are they looking, do you think, to elevate themselves to power? Do they, I'm just wondering if there's any way to work with them, or they have to be overcome.
Yes.
Maybe
I
that's a
think-
naive question, but I can't help but wonder
Good
because
one.
they
It's a
were
good
able
one.
to come together and stop the prime minister. And we know in Haiti that the everyday people are fed up with international organizations, as Ian was talking about, given the history. You know, so where can the leadership come from within is what I wonder.
As a Haitian, I might not be proud to say it. I think that one of the challenges that we have is leadership. Unfortunately, that's I think it's been almost a month since the prime minister said that he will step down if we have a presidential council. Today, we still don't have that because there's still a lot of discussions to find a solution. But since President Jovenel was there was always those talk, and the opposition, they were all united against him. Once he's assassinated, then everybody started fighting to each other. So this is a big problem that we know that, unfortunately, we need to have a solution to that. When it comes to the gangs, I honestly don't know, because I would assume that what is happening is that they realize and they see that they can actually control the situation. And right now they are winning because they can dictate what they want. Because if they can force the prime minister to step down, so I think they would be asking more. What we don't know, and I don't think any of them right now has any intention to become president. I think there's a lot of power into what they are doing right now. They might have some leaders that they think, oh, someone that they think might be their leader because of maybe promises that they make, or the way, the vision, the way that you see that. But really, I think what is happening, and that's, I was talking to Chris earlier about this, what we're also seeing is what we call the Stockholm syndrome, that a lot of, end of February, there was 2 prison breaks, and a lot of criminals are on the run. And a lot of them basically go back to their community where they were basically the gang leader. But when they were gone, there's probably rival gangs that basically that take over those communities. So what they are doing right now is going back to those communities and getting all of those people that were displaced by the actual gang to tell them, we are with you. I will be your savior. I will be your champion. So go with me. And what you see that people are hopeless, what they do, they say, okay, this is a better alternative because I was living in tents. I was living in a public shelter. Now this guy is promising me to bring me back to home. So he is the guy. So I do think, as Ian mentioned at the very beginning, I think the international community has a big debt toward Haiti. And I think we need to do things differently. I think there's been a lot of efforts, there's been a lot of work done, but unfortunately, if we can talk about maybe since that we have the UN intervention in Haiti, every time the UN forces left, things become worse than they were before. I think we need to ask that question, what really happened? So I think we need to have, if we're talking about, reinstating democracy, that we want to have all of the institutions working, we need to put policies in place where we can actually force people to obey by the law. And people should also have in mind that there's consequences by not following the rules. And right now, the problem is that everybody feels like they can do whatever they want because, I'm not going to jail, I'm not going anywhere. So it's okay for me to do all of those things. So it's almost feel like honest people should be ashamed in Haiti, and then all of those corrupt politicians and all of these people, so they are the one who can say whatever, they can make those decisions. So my ask would say that we need to think differently. We've done a lot and we have not seen the results yet. So we need to think otherwise because it's not working.
Have you
Ian,
considered, sorry, it was,
well, I think we should go back to the food situation a little bit. We're getting some questions in the chat. Ian and I are expressing our interest in UN.
well, while I'm doing
perhaps we
that,
should.
I'll go on. If I can carry on automatic. One of the interesting things was an international suggestion of the Kenyan police force. So whose idea would it be to bring an Anglophone police force, widely reputed to be the finest that money can buy in Africa, and put them into a Francophone situation in Haiti where corruption is already an issue? I'm just wondering, I know what the question is, but is this really the solution?
I think the solution is the United Nations and the international community, or if you are familiar to Haiti, that we have what we call the core group, which is basically a consortium of several Western countries basically are working with the Haitian government to create and to put policies in place. And I think that we need to look, they all together, we need to look at what is not working. Because I think when the president was assassinated, everybody saw we were going toward that way, because there was, at the time of the assassination of the president, basically there was no, almost all of the state institutions basically, I would say, we're on the verge of collapsing. We had no parliament. The justice system, there's a lot of high judge that needed to be renewed. So it was very challenging, and that was an opportunity for us to, rethink the way that we do it. Now, bringing Kenya, I think the Haitian government made that request to the UN, and then the US said, okay, they will support that mission. And I think they're calling out a lot of countries, probably, I don't know, but I think the Kenyan were not probably the first option or the first country that wanted to lead that. So we do, as a Haitian, I always feel like, I don't know the experience that the Kenyan police have, but it wouldn't be fair to send them here by themselves. And I think that's why probably they go to West Africa looking for other French-speaking countries that could come, because even they are English-speaking, so even culturally, they cannot relate. We speak Creole and French, and there's a lot of, cultural differences. I think West African countries, maybe Benin, Togo, yes. And we do have maybe other countries in the region maybe that have similar experience fighting with gangs that might be able to help. So it's to say that I think what we call it multinational, I do believe that we need to have more forces with more experience in fighting gangs, and that has all of the manpower and resources to fight against that. But the challenge is, we don't know, because that's the big unknown, if the gangs will be fighting against those forces. So we really have to think, okay, how do we, even if we were to come in and kill all of the gangs, or that we find, presidential pardon, that we find ways to work with them, how do we prevent that from happening again? And this is by creating institutions, building the police, because the police, unfortunately, the national police is powerless. So they need to have all of the support. And we have an army basically that has no resources at all. So we need to rethink. It's not only to bring the multinational force to come to help fight against the actual problem, is to create system and policies that will help us so we don't have the same situation again.
Yeah, and I would even say we're really in a difficult place right now, because that question you're asking, Ian, is a great question. And it's almost like, in an ideal state, it's one we would have dove into as a whole collectively several months ago. Now we're in this place where, the port in Port-au-Prince is closed. And as Kristen and Remenson talked about, this means that food insecurity throughout the country is running rampant. We're seeing, while we're in the midst of deliberating these things and trying to figure out how to get funds released and who to get on the ground, I mean, children are dying, right? Malnutrition is skyrocketing. And so it's put us in a very unique place, because as we're seeing this happen, because of our position in the North and on the ground, we are able to intervene We just 2 weeks ago, one of the big aid organizations in Haiti that we work with reached out to us and they said, hey, we have supplies that need to get to places desperately, and we don't have a way of getting them there. And because we've been on the ground for 20 plus years, because and with the same group of people, right? Our staff has been with many of our staff has been with us for well over 10 years at this point. We have these connections, we have these relationships on the ground. We're able to get into very hot, intense situations. We were able to pick up these supplies. We were able to monitor the roads, talk with people we had in the communities, and get those products to the children that needed them so desperately. And so there's this, one of my big frustrations is it's like, yes, we want to make sure that whatever happens in Haiti, we do it right. And I get that. At the same time, when I'm in Haiti and I see these children, I'm like, I don't know if we can wait for the perfect solution, right? I think we have to just get in there and roll up our sleeves and get our Sunday's best covered in mud, right? Because the children need it and it's a crisis right now.
So right now, what is the international community doing to help the food crisis? And what more could they be doing, in your view, given your experience on the ground?
Yeah, it's a very difficult situation right now because of compounding factors, right? Unfortunately, so much has been centralized in Port-au-Prince that during this time that seaport is essentially non-functioning, it means that the agencies that have the staff, I should say many of the agencies that have the staffing and capacity to meet the need are paralyzed. And or and they can't even bring in additional supplies, right? So I think there's a few things that can be done. I mean, I can say that great organizations like UNICEF we've been partnering even more and more with them. We've had a long relationship for many years, but that relationship just in the last even 24 months has become much tighter as we have to figure out how to collaborate together. And UNICEF is doing everything in their power to make the resources available. And then we, of course, as implementing partners on the ground, can help get those things where they need to go. But the other part of this is, as we all know, is the funding for food aid in Haiti right now it's desperately underfunded. I don't have the exact percentages in front of me, but I know recently World Food Program was talking about, I mean, I want to say it's something like 80% of their budget for Haiti maybe has not been met. And so there's a tension there because you have the organizations in Port-au-Prince, which are hampered by the gangs. You have the need out in Port-au-Prince, but outside of Port-au-Prince in the south, in Gonaïves on the west coast of Haiti, a city of 300,000 or more people that rely on goods to come from Port-au-Prince or Cap-Hatienne. So there's a lot of people trying to do the right thing, but because of the centralization in Port-au-Prince, it's been very challenging.
It sounds like you need a new supply route, like a new supply chain. That's not easy to build either, but maybe that's something that with leadership that could be arranged. Do you see anyone taking the lead on that?
Well, we do. We need almost what we would call a humanitarian corridor, right? We need those, especially the ports, the airports to be secured. We need some of those main national roads to be secured. It's without that, I just don't see this crisis getting any better. In fact, I see it getting much worse. Like I said, thankfully, we as an organization, because of where we are located, we are able to still bring in goods. We are still able to produce. We're still able to supply a large portion of the country with this life-saving food. But it's just quite candidly, with the borders closed and with the ports closed, if somebody does not move soon and does not figure out a way to open that up and get a humanitarian corridor in place, we're calling it a catastrophe now, but it will be so much worse.
And Chris, I think what I wanted to add to this is at the very beginning, like almost 6 months ago, when the UN resolution was voted and for the multinational mission to come to Haiti, that basically the aim was basically to secure the national roads, the ports, and the airports. What we've seen is since then, we have not seen a lot of actions taken to facilitate that to come in. So I think talking about funding, I think that mission need to have the funding so we can do that. And I think this is the time where, because when we ask for humanitarian corridor, we cannot ask the gangs to cease fire, to stop doing this. I don't think they will do it. So we need to have actions taken. And if the multinational is the solution, we need to have funding for that. And this is where I think everything is stopped. There's no funding available for that. And in the meantime, kids are dying, and we have more cases of malnutrition, and a lot of people basically have been displaced. And basically, school are almost impossible to function in Port-au-Prince. And we don't even have like stable internet or electricity where you could have online courses that could teach the children remotely. So it's very difficult. And it's a very challenging moment that requires the international basically to push to have those funding so we can have this humanitarian corridor to facilitate, the free movement of people within the country, but also the goods to save their lives in Haiti.
Is there any person or body in Haiti who has got respect enough to pull things together? I mean, there's no Nelson Mandela lurking in the background, waiting to be called upon to act as the country's savior. Not that I think Haiti's probably been saved too often by now, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I don't want to name anyone, but I do think, as I mentioned earlier, I think we have a big problem. It's a leadership problem. I think there should be, and we should have some respected people that could take over and lead the country, but it will depend on to the interests of the others, because I think there should be a lot of compromise done, and to say, okay, it's no longer my own interest, it's the interest of Haiti. And I think the challenge is right now, as I mentioned earlier, because we should have this presidential council 48 hours after the prime minister announced that he would step down. And today we're still talking about, how to find an agreement on the presidential council, then to have the government where you're going to have the prime minister with all of the ministers. So it's very hard to say. And I think there's a lot of interest, and that's what I think we need to have the international community, the core group, really to also seek for the Haitian solution, because most of the time those solutions might be a solution that are dictated, and I don't think it's intentionally or in a bad way. It might think, oh, that might be the solution, and then you have to do it, but it's not a solution that will help the people, or it's not a Haitian initiative or a Haitian solution presented. So we do need help. We do need to have, outside government and, officials to help us to create those policies. But when it's always, interference, and you say you do this, you do that, people sometimes might fail to think, oh, I think this is what the solution. They are just waiting for a solution to be given to them.
And question in the chat.
You go with it, Kristen.
Given the many challenges, when it comes to addressing this most immediate pressing concern of starving children, what are the main drivers that need to be addressed? Is it the funding? Is it the access? What are the main long-term issues that need to be addressed on that? And we're talking about 1.64 million people food insecure. Is famine next? Are we, how close do you think we are to that?
Yeah, I think there are definitely two ways we have to look at this. We have to look at that acute need and that long-term solution. We are at a place, I saw numbers recently where I think it's 1 in 5 families are at verge of falling into famine at this point, right? There's over approximately 50% of Haitian population is now in kind of severe food insecurity, right? And those numbers are jumping very quickly, very quickly. So this really raises concern that it's in a few weeks we could be really facing famine in a much bigger portion of the population in a very scary way. I think there's two things we need to address. There is that acute, so there's that aid aspect, and then there's that long-term the solution to chronic problems. From an aid standpoint, once again, I mean, I think the quickest way to begin to make a difference is those ports being opened, roads being opened, the ability to supply the needed aid is present, even for us as an organization. Of course, resources are always a bottleneck, but if resources are available, we and other actors on the ground, I think, have the ability to meet the need. So I would say for acute, it's resources being released, and then it's a solution to allow those resources to be distributed to the communities that need it most. In the long run, really, we look at the drivers of poverty, and we look at employment, right? We look at development. Unfortunately, and Remenson, feel free to jump in here. I don't want to speak on your behalf, but I think that industry, I lived for Haiti for 8 years. And I saw no shortage of people that wanted to work hard, wanted the opportunity to go to work and provide for their families, right? Just like people anywhere else. Unfortunately, I think the way things work is that there maybe is a smaller contingent of people that have consolidated power and consolidated a lot of the industry. And maybe it's not in their best interest to see more people step in and that to be more competitive. So I think there has to be, as Remenson talked about, we need that rule of law to be restored. We need a way for let's call it the Haitian middle class to develop. The people are present. They want to do it. And I think there is a lot of jobs that could be created. And that's the long-term solution, right? It's part of our model is saying, hey, if we don't figure out how to empower more farmers, how to help build a more resilient and thriving agriculture sector, it's going to be a bottleneck for development. If we don't figure out how to have more business, more industry in Haiti, those jobs that are needed in order to send your kids to a school or to a better school, to provide additional employment opportunities, if those bottlenecks remain in place, development becomes impossible. And so, for me, I see part of this is the acute need being addressed. And then we need to, I would say specifically the international community, maybe needs to rethink our long-term solutions. Our organization didn't start with being 100% Haitians on the ground, right? We did have expats that were present for a period of time, but we said, this isn't sustainable. This isn't the future, right? And so now Remenson is leading that team in Haiti. It's all local Haitian staff. It's ownership, right? And that creates something beautiful and the necessary environment for progress to be made. So how to get there, of course, is always going to be challenging, I think, in a developing environment. But my challenge to the international community is like we do have to figure out how to meet this acute need. And then we need to figure out how to empower the right people, the right portion of the populace in Haiti, because they're ready. They want to see their nation develop. They want to create industry. They want this progress. They just need some maybe they need some support.
And given your unique position, can you guys scale up now to what's holding you back from scaling up, given how life-saving your product has been and humanitarians are begging for it in Port-au-Prince?
Yeah, I think resources, of course, are, like I said, are always going to be the bottleneck. The more resources that are available, the more children we are able to impact, the more lives we're able to save. So resources is probably the biggest piece. Remenson, is there something else that from the ground you would say?
No, I think our resources funding is basically the biggest piece. We are ready. We back in December, basically not knowing what the situation would be, but we knew that there probably would be an increase of cases in Haiti. We've taken the initiative basically to hire more people, that we train more people, that we can add even a third shift into our production in order for us to be able to respond. But in order for us to do that, we need to have all of the resources. And we also need to be able to have that corridor that we can also do the distribution, because it doesn't help if we, continue production, then we cannot distribute that, we have to stop. So once we have that, I think we can move forward. And on the other point, I think when we were talking about the solution, I think Chris nailed it when he talked about MFK. I would say that MFK should probably be like an organization, like a success story that other organization could look into and say, okay, let's see what they do and let's replicate that, because we are in a position where I think a lot of what we are seeing in the region, a lot of other investment that were made, a lot of other organizations that came in, they basically have to shut down and leave. And we are still there. We are producing. We have the people, and the people, they have the will and the need, and they are excited, because it's, for a lot of us, it's not just a job. It's an opportunity for us, to play our part, to be part of that change that we want to see in Haiti. And after the earthquake, we've seen there was a lot of money, that was invested into helping Haiti, that we saw a lot of 5-star hotel built. There was a new industrial park built. I think we need to have more of those things. But in order for us to even have that, we need to have peace. We need to have stability. That's why again, goes back to the issue of, having policies basically that will allow us to maintain that, because nobody would invest in such an hostile environment. Whether it's Haitian or foreigners, we cannot do that. So we need to have that stability, that peace, that people can do that. And yes, people are basically looking for a job every day. We're hiring 25 people. We have over 500 people who apply. So it's just that there's the need for people, and people, they don't, as Haitian, as Ian said at the very beginning, we are very resilient, and we would take every little opportunity or the smallest resources available and convert that into something great. But right now, the situation makes it very difficult, because nobody knows what is going to happen. So that's why we want to have this kind of stability and peace happening, so people can move on with their life, and then that we can continue to build the economy.
Can international media come visit you?
We would love it.
it.
We would love it. If you want to go down, let me know. I'll fly down with you.
Call you after. mfkhaiti.org is the website, everyone. Check it out, mfkhaiti.org, if you want to learn more about the process.
Well,
Ian, final words?
that's all we have time for now. Just one very quick thought that I was meaning to put in. You're talking about the need for a Haitian middle class. There is a very resilient, active Haitian middle class. Unfortunately, it's in Toronto and Miami and New York and other places. So the question is how to get them involved back in Haiti, which a lot of them would like to be. And it comes down to the peace and security that we're talking about there. But this has been the this has been the Foreign Press Association, and Kristen and I would really like to thank Remenson, Tenor, and Chris Greene for the very practical talk, because we managed to pull it together. We weren't just talking about airy abstracts of economics, and geopolitics. We were getting down to where it counted, putting food in kids' plates. So thank you very much, and we hope to see you again soon. Come and join the Foreign Press Association. Send your donations, not as productive as for the medicine for food and food for kids, but we need resources to continue this as well. So join at least. Many thanks. This is Ian Williams. Have a good day.